So, here's a riddle for you. He's a vandal whose work gets painted over by city councils, but he's also an artist whose work sells for, over 18 million pounds. He's this anonymous ghost, but at the same time, he's one of the most famous cultural figures in the world. Okay, let's dive into the ultimate paradox. Banksy.
Right. This is the big one. The question that has launched 1,000 conspiracy theories, and really a global investigation that's been going on for decades. Is he a person, a collective, a brand? Well, he's definitely a person. And in this explainer, we're going to follow the clues to see just how close we can get to an answer.
You know, to really get Banksy, you have to start with his own words. He actually stenciled this image on his website right when his art was starting to sell for these insane prices. It's the perfect summary of his whole deal, a savage critique of the very art market that was making him a millionaire.
And then there's this classic quote. It just perfectly reinforces his whole anti-establishment, anti-commercial vibe. For him, art was for the public, right? Not some piece of private property. But what's really interesting is how this very idea would come back to bite him in a really, really big way.
Okay, so let's get into the defining feature of Banksy, the secrecy. At its core, being anonymous started out as just a practical thing. I mean, as Banksy himself has said, it's pretty vital because graffiti is illegal. But over time, that shield has turned into a massive part of his artistic identity. It's this whole concept that just amps up the mystery and, kind of ironically, his price tag. But, of course, a mystery this big, it's just begging to be solved. And for decades, people have been trying to do exactly that. You've got journalists, fans, even scientists, all trying to piece together this puzzle. And over the years, a few key suspects have started to emerge from the shadows.
The whole investigation has really zeroed in on two main guys from the Bristol scene. First up, you've got Robin Gunningham. A bunch of his old school friends have repeatedly said, yep, that's him. Then there's Robert Del Naja, who you might know as 3D from the band Massive Attack. He was a huge deal in the early graffiti scene, an artist that Banksy himself has said was a big inspiration.
And this is where the hunt gets really serious. Back in 2016, some researchers at Queen Mary University of London decided to treat Banksy's art not as art, but as a string of crime scenes. They used this technique called geographic profiling. It's normally used to catch serial criminals, to see if the locations of his murals could basically lead them right to his front door.
The results were, well, they were pretty stunning. The model pinpointed several hotspots for Banksy's activity that lined up almost perfectly with addresses linked to one of the main suspects, Robin Gunningham. The statistical link was so strong it was basically like a forensic fingerprint pointing right at him and his social circle in both London and Bristol.
But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Before the study was even officially published, Banksy's lawyers got involved, and the university ended up pulling its press release. Now, for a lot of people, this huge legal reaction was the strongest evidence yet. I mean, think about it. If the theory was just totally wrong, why try so hard to shut it down?
But look, whether he's Robin Gunningham or not, the identity question is only half the story. The other half is this massive conflict right at the heart of his work. Is it a crime or is it a masterpiece?
For officials, the answer is pretty clear. You've got groups like Keep Britain Tidy and city councils arguing for years that his work just encourages crime and creates this whole atmosphere of neglect and social decay. Over the years, countless Banksy pieces have been just unceremoniously painted right over.
And yet, the art market has a very different opinion. This number? That's the record-breaking price his piece Love is in the Bin sold for at Sotheby's in 2021. So, on one street his work gets scrubbed off a wall like it's a nuisance, while on another, it's being auctioned for enough money to buy the entire street.
His success had this ripple effect that just changed everything. They even coined a term for it, the Banksy effect. It basically describes how his incredible rise from the street to the auction house dragged the entire genre of street art right along with him, creating this huge, legitimate commercial market where one barely existed before.
But Banksy was never really comfortable with this whole market thing. And in 2018, he decided he was going to stage his most audacious protest yet, a piece of performance art aimed right at the heart of the establishment that was buying and selling his work. It was just a moment of pure, unadulterated shock. His iconic painting, Balloon Girl, sells for over £1 million at Sotheby's. The second the gavel falls, this alarm goes off, and a shredder that was hidden inside the frame activates, and it starts slicing the canvas into ribbons right in front of this stunned audience. So later, Banksy releases a video explaining the whole prank.
quoting this famous line. Turns out he'd built the shredder into the frame years earlier, just waiting, just in case it ever went to auction. So in his mind, he wasn't destroying art, he was creating a new piece. The act of destruction was the art.
And this just perfectly illustrates the ultimate irony. His big stunt, the one designed to mock how absurd the art market is, it ended up making the piece wildly more valuable. The shredded work, which he renamed Love is in the Bin, was resold 3 years later for over 18 times its original price. You can't make this stuff up. The market had the last laugh.
But to focus only on the price tag or the secret identity is to kind of miss the real point. Because beyond all the stunts and the secrecy, Banksy's work has always been driven by a really consistent and powerful political message. He uses public walls as his personal canvas for social commentary, and his themes are absolutely unmistakable. They pop up again and again. Sharp critiques of war, corporate greed, government surveillance, and these incredibly powerful statements on issues like the migrant crisis and social injustice.
And his activism isn't just confined to the UK. He travels to the front lines of global conflicts and social debates. I mean, from his dystopian Bemusement Park called Dismaland, to the walled-off hotel in Bethlehem that overlooks the West Bank barrier, to painting murals on bombed-out buildings in Ukraine, he puts his art right in the middle of the issues he's talking about.
This is exactly why his work is so effective. It really functions like a modern form of propaganda, right? It uses these simple, striking images to communicate incredibly complex ideas almost instantly. It just bypasses all the traditional media to inject his viewpoint directly into the public conversation and shape how we think about these critical issues.
Which brings us all the way back to that central mystery. We might be closer than we've ever been to knowing who he is, but that raises one final, crucial question. Is the power of Banksy's art totally tied to his anonymity? If the ghost was finally revealed to be just some guy, would the message still hit as hard? That's definitely something to think about.